what I've said a million times here, really, if you think about it. Don't get me wrong. I love a little contra. I love stirring the pot. Like I said, nothing gets me more animated. Nothing gets that blood pumping through my body like when I've got to, deliver a hit job on somebody or really roll up the sleeves and start getting the beads of sweat going. But one thing that I'm not a big believer in is contrived reaction. All right, let's generate this emotion. Put it, oh, wow, it seems so real. Meanwhile, you don't give a rat's behind about the topic that you're dishing about. What am I talking about? What I'm talking about is this. For years, but even for this year, for months, I've said, you know what, Teak? This Final Four football stuff is going to work itself out.
Yeah.
We can get up in arms about Cincinnati and Notre Dame and Oklahoma State and Baylor and this and that. I knew it was going to work out, and here we are once again. Everything worked out.
It did work out the way that it was supposed to, because Alabama, who we doubted, took care of business and just utterly obliterated Georgia, especially in the second half. I mean, it's really hard to out-coach Nick Saban, and Kirby Smart tried his dangdest, but it was just not happening.
Dangdest, huh?
I mean, just kind of found a word. It's my southernness.
Yeah, but that's bringing down the, I don't know, that kind of brings down the coolness factor on the show. His dangdest. His dangdest.
His darnest. Whatever you want to call it.
That's not an elevator either.
Yeah, true. But here's the reality. I mean, I hate to knock the kid because he's had such a good season. Yeah. Stetson Bennett just the moment wasn't good for him, man. He threw 2 interceptions. One was returned for a touchdown. If you're watching us on the network, you just saw it. And I should have known this, right? Because I did their game, Alabama, Georgia, last season in the early part of the year, and it was the same exact script. Georgia hangs tough.
17-17.
Yep, it's like it's right there. They're going to be, in the mix. The second half comes out. They get blown out. The doors blown off in the second half. And Stetson Bennett, just like this year, threw interceptions last year. The moment was just too big for him. Their defense got gashed in the pass game. Bryce Young threw for 421 yards.
That's amazing.
He looked compromised a week ago when they were playing Auburn. They got no pressure on him. This vaunted Georgia defensive front got no pressure on him. Didn't get sacked. Allowed him to stand in the pocket and pick them apart. And Nick Saban exercises, this. It just becomes Nick Saban. He's the GOAT, right? He does this on the reg. So why we ever doubted him, I don't know. But they stood up and won the SEC championship and elevated themselves to the #1 seed in the college football playoff.
But think about this: did we doubt Nick Saban, or were we just elevating Georgia? Because you can separate the two there. I don't know that we ever doubt.
I did a little bit.
Go ahead.
I doubted Bryce Young a little bit.
But that's not doubting Nick Saban. That's my point.
True.
We knew that this wasn't vintage Bama, but it wasn't about Nick Saban.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the players play, but I shouldn't have doubted that he would come into this game with a plan. And there was a clear plan. You could see it. It played itself out slowly, but then it just exploded for them. You give Bill O'Brien credit, who we maligned him here and there, the offensive coordinator for Alabama. He found ways to exploit Georgia. They never got home, and ultimately on the defensive side of the ball, they just stymied, right, Stetson Bennett. And again, that might just be Stetson Bennett being the moment too big. They'll get another chance. They didn't fall out of the playoffs, so I'm glad Georgia's around. But Alabama, Michigan, who took care of business, we'll get to in a second.
Yep.
Georgia, and then Cincinnati hangs in there after being undefeated. There was no way they could drop Cincinnati out of it. And so I'm glad that the playoff committee did the right thing. And even though they're Group of 5, have a weak schedule, they won all the games that they needed to, and when it came down to it at the end of the season, they won some convincingly.
And they flexed in the conference championship.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, listen, there was a, and I know we've recycled this stuff for a while here, because the Cincinnati story was the Cincinnati story until they were either included or left out, or we had to reference their entire body of work. And there was a 3-week stretch: the Navy game, the Tulane game, and maybe the Tulsa game, where it was like 7-point win, teams that you're supposed to just step on and annihilate if you've got any business as a Group of 5 cracking the party for the first time, and they didn't do that. So it was fair to wonder just how explosive this team. But the way they finished the season, they started to flex a little bit, which I think we all wanted to see. And listen, I wasn't watching the SEC championship rooting against Georgia. I definitely wasn't. Didn't bet the game. Didn't have any emotional interest in the game outside of seeing what we'd be talking about on Monday, meaning today. But I'll tell you what. if Georgia would have stymied Alabama and, made them look fairly impotent, what this does to me, this heightens, even though you're always going to have great interest in the Final Four, I get it, the national semifinals, but to me, I was beginning to think that Georgia was borderline impenetrable.
Yes.
And I kind of like that now all of a sudden there's an element of theater. I don't know if Cincinnati could win, but I don't know. Michigan suddenly started to look really good. I think it's more competitive, I think, than it's been the last couple of years, is what I'm saying.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you said that, because last year, I told you this all year long because I did 3 Alabama games. I said, nobody's beating Alabama.
Yep.
I don't care. They could probably beat Jacksonville at this point. They were that good last season. They were dominant. The year before, nobody was beating LSU, right? They were just dominant. They had an elite offense and a defense that was veteran, and they were just, nobody was beating them. Mm-hmm. And you got to the college football playoff, and it was almost a foregone conclusion who was coming out on top. But this year, because of exactly what you said, Michigan played a bad quarter against Michigan. That's it.
That's true.
They played some close games. Nebraska was probably more close than it should have been. I think Scott Frost has those guys playing tough, but they're just not quite good enough. But still, Michigan had a bad quarter and lost 1 game to Michigan State. They were better than Michigan State. They were beating them by 16 in the fourth quarter. They played a bad quarter, had a couple turnovers. J.J. McCarthy coming in for whatever reason, fumbles the football, opens the door. Michigan State wins that football game, but a bad quarter was all they had. Otherwise, they're undefeated, and they look dominant. They have a great running game, and Hassan Haskins.
Getting a little tricky, too.
Oh,
Getting a little tricky. It's a modern offense in Michigan.
You, what the hell is going on with Jim Harbaugh?
Flea flickers and messing around a little bit.
But now they'll play Georgia. And I don't know who's winning that game.
I'm not sure either.
Right?
A month ago, I thought Georgia would have beat them by 3 touchdowns.
You got an old school, downhill, and edge run game going against the best defensive front 7 in college football this year. So the semifinal, Michigan, Georgia, I can't call that one.
I
don't know what the line is going to be. I can't tell you who's going to win.
Well, there's definitely Mike, what is the line out there?
It's got to be out there already.
I didn't even see it yet. I'm always on top. I just did not see it yet.
I haven't either.
I'm going to say Georgia by, this is a
3?
complete guess. I was going to say 3.5. I think they might give Georgia a little more respect, give them the half a point, give the betting public a chance to influence up or down, probably down.
Michigan beat up Ohio State.
I understand that. And Oregon also beat up on Ohio State, and Oregon did not look good twice against Utah. So, these are all things they got to weigh in. Mike, do you have the spread?
Yeah,
shouldn't be that hard.
Is there one? They might not have released it yet.
They had to.
Yeah,
we'll
find.
Let me check.
7.
Sharp Tierney.
Georgia minus 7.
7.
Wow.
7. I got to make a call right now. Hey,
get on that one right now. Right?
Give me a dime on the Wolverines.
Right? But the other game, Alabama and Cincinnati. Alabama hasn't looked good against, again, teams that they're supposed to beat. Like Florida took them to the wire.
Yes.
Texas A&M beat them. Right? Texas A&M is good. They shouldn't be beating Alabama. Auburn, who is 6-6, almost beat Alabama. So could
needed
Cincinnati,
a 90-yard drive.
Could Cincinnati with a good run game and a wide open passing game, even though there's no real stars as a receiver. Pierce is a good player, but he's not getting he's not a first round draft pick, in the NFL. But Cincinnati, can they find a way to confuse Alabama's defense and put up some points? Of course they can. It might be a shootout because Cincinnati doesn't play great defense either. But
what's the over under?
I know, but could Cincinnati beat them? Maybe. They've won every game this year. To your point, there's great intrigue this year, especially, and even if it's just, what if the group of 5 just gets their doors blown off?
There we go.
That's interesting.
That's a story enough to latch on to.
I agree.
I love the analogy. What is usually said is you guys are always tooting our horn, and sometimes that seeps into the locker room, and the rat poison is detrimental to the team. What he's saying this week is you guys were kind of doubting us a little bit, so it went the other way. I was able to, or we were able to compartmentalize that and say, okay, you know what? This is going to be a different form of digestion. We're going to use this as fuel, and listen, if there's one thing we should know, whether it's a Belichick, whether it's a Parcells back in the day, whether it's a Coach K, whether it's a Saban, whether it's an Izzo, you name the great coaches in both sports, when these guys when they get a little disrespected, a little overlooked, a little glossed over in the court of public opinion, that's when you better watch out.
Oh, yeah, because they never have billboard material, ever.
Nah.
Because they're too good.
We expect them to smoke everybody.
Right. So what are you saying negative about them?
That's right.
And even if you do say something negative, it's kind of unbelievable. So it's kind of like you're just saying it to say it. So, yeah, when there's actual rat poison, to use Saban's word, that is actually more like Skittles, then they jumped it up, man, and it was fun to watch, right? Because they finally put it all together, both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively. But that's kind of Nick Saban with all of his former employees, right? He just seems to have their number.
He owns them.
He really
What's
does.
the record? I don't know, 18-1. I think it's like, is it a one? Is it a one blemish?
Yeah,
Just the Jimbo, right?
Just Jimbo, I think, right?
I think he was undefeated before the Jimbo loss. I'm pretty sure. What really happened for years, because Tiki and I have been working together since 2013. So when Jim Harbaugh, wound up going to Michigan, which, by the way, we kind of called, not to toot the horns, but we kind of predicted that. I mean, we just felt
back when
I'm talking about day one.
When the chaos happened.
With Jed York to an extent, but Trent Baalke more so. That disconnect with the former GM. And so Harbaugh, and then of course we latched on. Hey, Michigan man going back home, and they're going to win 1 or 2 titles, and they're going to be in the mix and beat the Buckeyes. And of course, it didn't happen until this year because they were 0-5 and they lost by an average of 20 points against Ohio State the previous 5 games. And it's so ironic because every year we just threw so much Jim Harbaugh into the conversation. This was the first year that we kind of ignored him.
Yes.
And it's the first year he cracked through.
Yeah.
But we ignored Michigan a lot this year.
We didn't give him the rat poison. Seriously. He didn't have anything to chew on. He just kind of just sitting back, just sitting in the shade, right? Sitting in the cut, waiting for his time to pounce. And he did. And it goes back to what we heard couple of years ago. I forgot who we were talking to about the Ohio State-Michigan game and how Ohio State was just like all week. Was
it Braylon Edwards who told us that?
Was it Braylon? I don't think so, because it was before we had a relationship like that. I'm talking about like 3 years ago.
Back in the day you're talking about.
Like when Harbaugh first got there.
Got it.
How Ohio State would practice every day. Mm-hmm. Something Michigan. Mm-hmm. Every single day was something Michigan. So when it came down to this important Big Ten East, rivalry game on rivalry week, like their minds had been on it for like a month and a half, 2 months. Harbaugh never did it. It was always, hey, just another game. It's not just another game. It's a humongous game. And this year he changed that. He put a sign up in Schembechler Hall that said, "What are you doing?" Capital U. What are you doing?
Capital U or capital Y?
Capital Y-O-U.
Okay. I can't imagine in Michigan, the letter U.
Yeah.
What are you? Like a 12-year-old texting.
It's
pretty fairly prestigious school.
Why are you doing? What are you doing to beat Ohio State today?
Yeah.
Right? Every day. So I think that was a huge thing that changed the mindset of his veteran team, and he finally was able to push through, and they stay focused all the way through. They didn't make any mistakes except against Michigan State. And now here they are, second-ranked team in the college football playoff with a real chance, right?
Yeah.
Georgia showed some vulnerability.
Yes, they did.
Alabama exposed them. If Michigan plays their game and doesn't make mistakes, they could be in the national championship.
I got a question for you. I know we got a break, though. This was a little surprising. So Joe Brady got fired by the Panthers.
Very surprising.
Okay. If you're Michigan, do you hire him for 3 weeks? Maybe mess around an advisory role? I mean, or if you're Cincinnati, if you're anybody.
Yeah. You know what's going to happen. He's going to go to Alabama as an adviser, be the next offensive
regenerate like everybody else
Bill
does.
O'Brien's going to take a head coaching job because there's still some available.
Okay.
And maybe Oklahoma. Yeah. And now all of a sudden Nick Saban's going to create another elite head coach out of his, out of the trash heap,
the recycle bin.
The recycle bin. That was interesting. That was really interesting.
Should anybody make, hey, we'll give you, $500,000 for a month of work.
Yeah. I mean, I would.
Why not?
Why not?
Okay.
Right?
All right.
He could end up back at LSU, too, by the way.
You think, even without Eddie O? You think? By the way, Chip Kelly with that accent, what are you doing, dude?
Yeah, you mean Brian Kelly.
Brian Kelly, what are you doing?
I don't know, dude.
Hey, yo!
Yeah, exactly.
Good to be back down here on the bayou.
That's right. In
Chip,
you remember?
You're from the North. I keep calling him Chip. Brian.
Yeah.
You're from the Northeast, dude.
Yeah. You've never been South.
What are you doing?
I don't know.
I don't know. That's inauthentic. Listen, I love Brian Kelly. And I'm okay with the Northeast Bayou fit.
Yep.
Because the man can coach, but that was weird.
Yeah, well, he's got to put his staff together. Tommy Rees is staying as offensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman, is now the new head coach. So he doesn't have his 2 coordinators who were a big part of his success. Good luck, Brian.
Go get it, buddy. No pressure, coach.
Not like jambalaya down there.
That's right. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell to be notified when we drop fresh content.